Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today we're going to be traveling to South Park Township, Pennsylvania. I'm Erica.
And I'm Sarah.
Let's get into it. So, today we're talking about a tunnel, and I'm very excited because we actually visited this place.
Yeah, twice, accidentally.
Yes. Drove just right through it the first time, not realizing. So this tunnel is called Green Man's Tunnel in South Park Township, Pennsylvania, and it's on Piney Fork Road. And it was like an hour away from us, which is funny because if you look on it on a map, it's like, I consistently forget how huge PA is.
Yeah.
But yes, so it was during the daytime, so from what I remember, we didn't really have anything scary happen while we were there.
No.
But according to the legend, that actually makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we went at the wrong time.
Yes. I also will say I did feel like the vibes were off in there.
Yeah.
But I feel like always, the vibes are always off when I know we're going to be in someplace spooky.
Well, and it was like a tunnel. And if you remember, when we went through the tunnel, there was like a bunch of vehicles parked and people standing around.
Yes.
So there was a lot of factors. We were like, let's keep driving.
Yes. So the way that I'll talk about it is, of course, history and then hauntings. But the way I'm going to break up the history is I'll talk about the actual legend first and like the legend of the man. And then I'll talk about the real man.
Okay.
And to start it off, this story made me sad.
Oh, no.
Like, I genuinely, this story makes me sad. So to get into it first, the legend says that the Green Man... I should say one of the legends, because there's a few different versions of the story. He was once an employee of a local power company, and he was disfigured in a terrible accident that ended up melting his face and turning his skin a deep green hue.
That's really interesting to me, because the deep green hue part doesn't really make any sense to me. I feel like that has to be fake. That's like... people think like radioactive is like green.
Yes. And so it almost seems like they heard electrical accident and just assigned the green hue.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I've never seen any wound that is healed over that's green.
No. Unless we're talking about like superhero worlds.
Right.
So another version, he's known as Charlie No Face, which is not very nice, but that's what people said. Mm-hmm. He was said to have been an electrical worker who was in an accident that melted his face and killed him. So that's the disparity.
Okay.
Other versions say that he was a laborer who was either struck by lightning or who was struck by lightning and electrocuted while working on the railroad.
Wow.
So that's another version. And then, as you can see, so some of the versions of the legend say that he died and his ghost haunts the area at night, but others versions actually say that he was just horribly disfigured and only comes out at night. Oh,
that's interesting. What year is this?
So this legend was basically starting and getting more popular in the 1960s and 70s.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is when it was like picking up. One source that I read had said the same sort of stuff about the Green Man, but said that the legend actually gets combined with the Corvette Tunnel legend. And apparently, I didn't see this when we were there, but there's two tunnels, and they're like in the same area, kind of like next to each other.
How did we not see that? That makes no sense.
Yeah, but this person says that there's another tunnel where two Chevrolet Corvettes were speeding down the road, and one of them made it, and one of them crashed into the creek.
There was a creek?
Yes.
But there was not a second tunnel.
No, did not see it anywhere. And then, this was just interesting to me. So one random comment in this source that I was reading said, "From what I once heard, the Green Man was a criminal who was arrested and sentenced to death. He was in an electric chair and he was electrocuted and turned green. He didn't die, though, supposedly, if I'm remembering my dad's story correctly."
Okay. Again, the green.
Yes.
How?
I have no idea. And to be honest with you, that one really stuck out to me because I was like, actually, how many versions of the story are there?
Right.
There's a lot. And that one just seemed so out of the blue. I didn't see any other source that mentioned that he was a criminal, any sort of thing like that. So those are all of the legends that I was able to find. There was actually a real man. His name was Raymond Theodore Robinson. He was born on October 29th, 1910, and he passed on June 11th, 1985. The actual story of his life starts and ties into this legend. When he was 8 years old, he saw a bird's nest on the Murado Bridge outside of Beaver Falls. He climbed a pole to try to reach for it, and he was injured by the electrical line while climbing. So it's an 8-year-old child, which is really sad.
Yeah.
And according to Wikipedia, the bridge carried a trolley and had electrical lines of both 1,200 and 22,000 volts. And the 22,000 volts line is supposedly what he hit.
Oh.
So I tried to do research because I don't know about you, but I don't really have context for what is a lot of volts. I mean, 22,000 sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
I can like stretch back to sophomore year physics and like calculate the ohms in volts or something.
Well, it was really complicated. I tried to like convert it to amps, but then you needed like the watts or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So another source that I was reading, I actually tried to look into this a little bit. Another source that I was reading said that the bridge was 22,000 volts of AC electricity or alternating current electricity. And that's when I assume you know this if you do physics. So just for everybody who doesn't know, it's when the direction of the flow of electrons switches back and forth at regular intervals or cycles. And I looked up the amount that it takes to be fatal to a human, and I had some sources saying 100 to 250 volts is usually fatal.
Oh, so it's what, 1,000 times?
Yeah.
Or 100 times?
Yes. And some deaths have actually occurred at 42 volts.
Oh.
So it was a lot.
Significant.
Yes. So he survived. But of course he had lost his eyes, his nose, and his right arm.
Oh.
As an 8-year-old, which is...
In the 60s, right?
Yes, but at this point it had to be, 28 if he was born in 1910?
Yeah, that's crazy.
No,
How would someone survive?
18, yeah.
How would someone survive?
I have no...
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. So for the rest of his life, he lived in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. Because of his appearance, he went out on long walks on State Route 351, but used a walking stick to do so, and this was always at night.
That makes sense.
And several sources also mentioned that he rarely went out during the day, so that's why it could be that we didn't get a lot of activity, because it's just not something that people experience during the day. So as he continued walking on this road, groups of locals would regularly gather to like search for him, because once one car saw him and started spreading this story of a man walking at night and he kind of looked like a ghost.
Yeah.
The story spread pretty fast.
Makes sense.
Some people were friendly. Some people were absolutely cruel. So he was struck by a car as a person. As a live human being, he was struck by cars more than once, which is terrible. But he was never deterred, and he kept walking. And some people will actually stop for a short conversation or a photograph, and he would ask for beer or cigarettes. So he seemed like a pretty down to earth.
So even though he's had so much happen to him.
Yes, super down to earth. People were saying that he was super friendly. So yeah, it made me super sad that people were treating him like that, because I mean, I guess maybe people thought he was a ghost at some point, but when you're getting up close to somebody like that, you have to realize they're not a ghost,
right? It's a real person,
right?
Yeah. Was he actually green?
So one source said that some people actually said his greenness came from a green plaid shirt that he used to wear.
Okay.
So a lot of the sources are he had green skin, but that makes more sense to me.
So, because I Googled it, human turning green. So there actually is a condition called sulfhemoglobin, in which the sulfur atom prevents the iron in hemoglobin from binding to oxygen. And since oxygen and iron binding makes blood appear red, the lack of the binding could cause color change.
Oh.
And it can cause blood to appear blue, green, or black.
Interesting.
But that seems unlikely because that seems like a pretty significant medical condition if your hemoglobin's binding incorrectly.
Yes.
So the other things, this is from NIH, it says green human skin may be a result of a gamut of causes such as chlorosis, copper, drugs, green textile dye, green tattoos, apocrine and eccrine chromohydrosis, I have no clue what that is, hyperbiliverdinium, chloromas, use of green dyes, and multiple organ failure in feeding tube patients.
That's a lot of reasons. That's a lot more reasons than I would have thought that a human's skin could look green.
Right. That's why I'm asking if he was actually green, because
it's possible.
Yeah, and something else that I was reading said that human sweat can corrode copper, which turns green when it's oxidized.
Oh.
So I was wondering, but it doesn't sound like there was any copper involved. But anyways, I think the green shirt probably is the most likely cause.
That's really interesting. That's so interesting that there's so many things. And
Yeah.
it could have been, but it also could have been one of those.
Right.
I mean, who knows what was in the electric line?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Copper wires are common, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe he was green after it happened.
So that's the legend versus the real man.
Yeah.
Which I thought was important to delineate.
Yes.
Now to get into the hauntings. So up until his death, most of the stories were just about a man or a faceless ghost walking down the road. Because, of course, it was just him just walking. Then, after he passed, the legends ended up getting more scary. Because he wasn't there anymore, and I think stories changed.
Right, it sounds like he was almost like a figure in the community.
Yes, right. So, but after he passed, people were stating that his spirit was a vengeful one out for teenage blood, which was clearly just to scare the teenagers at the time. And now we're getting into like the 80s, 90s, because he passed in 1985. At this point, one of the sources was basically like the actual story of Raymond had kind of been lost, and it's just this like green man that's prevailing.
I'm sure.
So what teenagers are reporting that they've seen, they said that they've seen him near the site of the accident, and that would be the tunnel that we drove through. Okay. Which is actually one of Pennsylvania's abandoned railroad tunnels. So I think that's where the railroad legend comes from. Okay. And then his shimmering green form has been said to have seen late at night stalking the tunnel. So now it's like his ghost form is green.
Well, so that's what I thought. That's how I thought he got the name. I didn't think it was linked to reality. Right. I thought it was, post-mortem, his ghost is green, not his living flesh is green. Yes.
Yeah, I honestly was not expecting to be researching a real person. Right. At all. And then more specifically, so teenagers used to drive into the tunnel, turn off their lights, and call out to the green man who would appear from the darkness, again with that green glow. And apparently, if he touched your car, his electrical charge would either stall the vehicle or make it difficult to start.
So that's like, what is the road? Blue Mist Road.
Yes. That's one
scary.
And the tunnel at that park that we visited. Where you had to honk.
Yeah. McConnell's Mill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know you said you think the teenagers are the ones that are experiencing this because the teenagers, whatever, they're trying to scare them. But I do wonder why it's only teenagers reporting sightings. Yeah. Is it because teenagers are the ones that are hanging out in abandoned railroad tunnels?
And that's possible. I did see a source talk about the actual tunnel, and one of the things that they mentioned is that it's full of graffiti, and it was even back when it was like in its heyday. So it must have been a popular like teen spot or like party spot. Right. So maybe that's why like adults either avoided it or just drove through it without really paying attention. But I don't know, because that's a good point. I mean, like, we're not teens, and I'm sure at this point, it's not just teenagers visiting it.
Right. And so that's what I was thinking. I was wondering if it had something to do with his age of the accident, but he was only 8. Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So interesting. I found somebody who actually went twice. They said that they visited both of the tunnels, so the Green Man Tunnel and the Corvette Tunnel. And the interesting thing is, the first time they visited the both of them, nothing happened. But the second time they experienced what they think is like the Green Man hauntings in the Corvette Tunnel.
Oh, interesting. So he frequents both.
Yes. So, okay. So what happened to this guy? So the first time he goes, nothing happens. The second time he visited with his girlfriend and another one of their friends. And the friend was about 20 steps behind him and his girlfriend because at some point she had gone back to the car as they were walking up. And right when him and his girlfriend hit the tunnel, he said 4 things happened. So the temperature dropped at least 20 degrees and it was like 55 out.
Oh, so it got freezing.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That was like a drastic change from 55 to like 35. Then they heard a loud guttural moan from a male voice that echoed throughout the tunnel, which seems like no thank you.
Yeah, that would be enough to make me turn around.
Yes.
I would be like, is this someone that's alive?
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be like, somebody's at the other end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And then a light wind blew in different directions inside of the tunnel, and there was a pulsating, glowing white aura that was all around the inside of the tunnel.
See, I really commend people that experience something like this and they're like, let's go onward.
Yes.
Because I would be like, let's go to the car.
Yes. Well, okay. And then he said within 10 seconds, everything just went back to normal. And the crazy part was their friend, who was like 15 steps from the tunnel at that point, saw nothing and heard nothing.
So you really have to be in the tunnel.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's crazy. The scare, the haunting really has bounds. Wow.
Yeah. And another interesting point, like I said, he went to both of them to try to like check things out multiple times, and he's never gone back after that time.
I always think it's significant when people say something like that because it means that the experience they had was truly scary enough to deter them from going back.
Yes.
I wonder what would have happened if we got out of the car. But it was during the day.
That's a good question. Yeah. And again, there were so many cars there.
Yeah. There's a lot of people.
But yeah, I think that would be interesting. There were a ton of people commenting on multiple ones of these sources stating that either they had spoken to Raymond or somebody that they know had back in like the 60s, 70s, which I thought was super interesting. Like somebody had said, in the late 60s and early 70s, we used to drive over to see the Green Man. He was real. His name was Ray. My friend, name redacted, had at one time a picture of him.
So maybe he is mad. Because at first it sounded like he was a beloved part of society. But that makes him sound like a circus freak.
Yes. Yes. So I said the same thing. I think it's a very huge possibility that he's haunting the tunnels now, but when this all started, he was a real man who had just suffered a terrible accident.
Right.
The interesting thing was, one of the sources I was reading said that apparently he took the ghost stories in stride, so he knew about them.
Interesting.
And if he's actually haunting them now, it's almost like he's like, okay, well, you thought that I was haunting them? Like, now I actually am.
Guess what? Guess who's back.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's it's a sad story. I hope that he's at peace now.
Right. It almost sounds like he's just living his petty best life.
Yes.
I choose to believe that narrative.
Right.
Because I think it's good.
Yes. So that is the story. Oh, no, we're not done. Okay.
We're not done.
Would we go back?
So, I don't know. And here's why. There is something to be said for the lack of safety of walking in a tunnel at night. It was a 1-lane tunnel merging from 2-lane roads at night. I don't know if it would be safe. Like physical safety, not even like paranormal safety. So I don't think I would go back. It's not that I would actively avoid it for fear of the haunting. I just don't think there's a draw for me personally to go back.
No, I thought the same thing. The road is super far back.
Yeah.
From civilization, if I remember correctly. And what if, I literally thought about this too, because I was like, what if there are people who know about the hauntings who are just waiting for people to do this at night?
Right.
It seems not safe in a reality sense.
Right. And there's just no reason, because either way, whether he's like getting back at society and being petty, or he's haunting it because he's angry, it feels like we have no place being there.
Yeah, I just feel really bad for him, and I almost wish that he was still alive, because it sounds like he would have been a nice person to meet. Yeah. Genuinely. And I honestly probably may not have gone, just because I'm sure he wanted to be left alone. But yeah, I think he just needs to be left alone at this point.
I agree.
That is the story of Green Man's Tunnel in South Park Township, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and stay tuned to see where we go next week.